Aloha. This video I wanted to share my experience with doing spoken word and stand-up lately. I performed here in the Bay Area a couple of times at the beginning of this week, Tuesday and Wednesday, just to knock the dust off the shells and knock the rust off my joints and get back into that format again. And the reason why I've been staying away from it is because I don't at all really like catering to any kind of formats, unless it's like a discussion format. Like, it's just like, okay, you can say whatever you want to say, however you want to say it, without having to abide by any kind of stylized format. So stand-up comedy is a stylized format. Spoken word art is a stylized format. And how I was explaining it to a friend of mine, what the format has done, or what society has done, has created this atmosphere where the format is actually more important than the content itself or the intention itself. So if you were to ask any kind of critical thinker, what is the intention of spoken word art? And if you were to ask any critical thinking stand-up comedian, you would ask them, what are the intentions of spoken word art? Ultimately, when you ask somebody like that, they're not going to really have anything to say about the format. They don't really give a shit about how you perform, or if certain people get the jokes or not, or if certain people get the words or not. Do they understand the intention, the content that you're sharing? Do they understand that? Well, that doesn't even matter as long as you are abiding by your own inner expressions, holding true to what it is that you know the definitions are. What are the definitions to you of spoken word? Where for me, it's the word spoken in, like, from the heart. I mean, to keep it as simple as possible. When you really see that definition and stay with that definition, it has nothing to do with the format. In fact, you'll realize that the formatting will eventually become a hindrance. And this is what I'm seeing with the spoken word format of society today. But it's so much more beyond that. That's just seeing spoken word for what it is, on a personal level, like on an artistic level. But on an influential level in society, we'll see that spoken word has a much more different effect on society than the true intentions of its origins. The same way with stand-up comedy. Stand-up comedy is used as a weapon for the colonial system today. This is obvious. Look at stand-up comedy. You're basically looking at dick jokes, pussy jokes, fat jokes, race jokes, and now it's social media jokes and Trump jokes. That's basically the whole atmosphere of stand-up comedy. And if you were to hit those topics, that content, with a average, like a baseline sort of stand-up comedy style, then you'll be successful. So, you know, any idiot could really do that, as long as you're comfortable with big crowds or anything like that. So if that's the case, then you're really not dealing with an art anymore. You're dealing with some kind of corporate information sharing thing. And the corporation that stand-up comedy and the spoken word, mainstream spoken word, is attached to, that corporation is the corporation of racism, white supremacy, and the colonial system overall. So like I said, just like the image that you're looking at right here, I've been talking about Russell Brand, Deepak Chopra, Tony Robbins, Eckhart Tolle, all these people who are in this mainstream circuit of so-called spirituality or forward thinking or whatever it is, they are now starting to hook up with these mainstream, not giving a fuck ass colonial mentality, millionaire, billionaire, and trillionaires, as if spirituality can be, or true alchemy and spirituality can just be part of the Western world. When in fact the Western world is making its money, makes its entire existence off of destroying the original people, destroying the original alchemy that exists in the people and as the people. So this is not a system that can be fixed. It's only a system that vampires, it parasites off of the people and the systems. So any of the systems that are out there that are supposedly for the people are going to be affected by this parasite. Has spoken word been affected by this parasite? You better fucking believe it has. I've been witnessing for the last 6 or 7 years since I've been paying attention to it. I've been wanting to do spoken word. I've been doing it in my own way on my channel for however many years I've been doing it now, but I've been wanting to get back into that scene, but the only thing that's been keeping me from doing that is the politics there. At the local spoken word that I go to around here, I'm already known there. I've done what was it? Not the spoken word night. It was a open mic night. I've done an open mic night there where I just usually freestyle. So I go off on like what was the topics that were talked about in the evening. I include, so these are my vector points. I include the crowd, the audience, the topics that most people have already been speaking on for the evening, and the surroundings, so the venue. So that's plenty of things to talk about, and it's the most freshest information, the most fresh information that you can pull from, because it's brand new, and I don't even know a lot of the times what's going to be said because I'm just on this. So I just kind of like I'm freestyling now. I'll do that on the stage, and then I kind of like want to surprise myself the same way I surprise myself in these videos. So that's my style and that's my format, and I can shrink it down to like 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it is. Now that I'm focusing on it, but now that I've been focusing on it, having been in the venue area, I'm noticing even more the intricacies of how this stuff is manipulated, and what you're realizing, what you're watching when you're watching stand-up comedy. You're not watching stand-up comedy. You're watching basically like a commercial for the colonial world. This stuff is designed to keep you from going any further. So, like I've been saying, with us needing to dig deeper into our definitions of ourselves. So, like, what's your definition of love? Your definition of family? Your definition of friendship? Your definition of humanity? Your definition of relationships? Your definition of the soul, the spirit, community. Like, all these definitions have been given to us by the slave masters, the same way as our very language has been given to us by, what language am I speaking right now? What language are you listening with right now? See, this is all slave master mentality. So what language are the majorities of spoken words spoken with in the United States on stolen land? So inherently, this art form they call spoken word has an inherent like it eats itself, because the people, this is what happened, is that the people think that they're doing something positive, and they are. The only thing is up to a certain point, and it's within a system. So it's fixing the system within the system, claiming to be outside the system. It's never been outside the system. Just the same way stand-up comedy has never been outside the system. And if it has been outside the system at any point with any one individual, that system has, or that individual has been nullified or dealt with immediately. So the same way that the same kind of ignorance and arrogance that you're looking at these individuals, like I said, this London Real guy has interviewed new age gurus like Sadhguru on his show, and some David Icke. So this is how this stuff all ties in. This is how the money corporate world ties into the new age world. Here's your Sadhguru tied into so he's tied up with Muji, like as far as like information sharing, like modern information sharing these days. And people like Sadhguru and Muji are referenced by people like Russell Brand. And Russell Brand is seen out there by the people of the world as like this Western guru. So these Western gurus, the way they're sharing their perspectives of reality is that the Western gurus are allowed to speak what they are speaking because they are not a threat to the Western Empire. In fact, they are a benefit to the Western Empire, being that they make everybody okay with what's going on, except they're amazing for acceptance and forgiveness. So it's basically the new Christianity. Just accept and forgive. Accept the colonizers, forgive the colonizers, do not have any accountability for what has happened and what is happening, do not have any awareness for what is being planned to happen in the future. Only accept everything and meditate your way into the future that involves technology, and hopefully that technology will connect to extraterrestrials that will enlighten us and unify the whole world. That's basically the new age hope structure of that's being pushed by people like whoever this guy is on London Real and Russell Brand, Sadhguru, Muji. Whether they know it or not, they are being used for that, simply because, for one way, their very presence and the way they are sharing this information is completely devoid of realizing that this system cannot be fixed. This is not a system that can be fixed. This system needs to be dug out like a fucking parasite, like a cancer. This is not a common cold. This whole Western ideology, the racism, white supremacy, the poisoning of the air, the poisoning of the water, the poisoning of the soil, the poisoning of your mind, the poisoning of the future generations, the poisoning of your ancestors, the destruction of the internal and external alchemy. This is not a fucking common cold. This is an ever-expanding cancer that needs to be cut out from the beginning, from the origins of what it is. If you do not do that, it will continue to grow. But since the system is aware that it is a cancer, it makes its money off of cancer, so-called healing or cancer cancer, like the pink ribbon programs. That's basically what the Western Empire is. It's a pink ribbon program. But the pink ribbons are slapped on KFC buckets of chicken that cause cancer. But you see a pink ribbon on a baseball bat in the American sport, the America's pastime. You see the American pastime superheroes swinging pink baseball bats. Well, the pink baseball bat is the same as a pink bucket of chicken. The Major League Baseball is causing cancer with all the concession that gets sold there. That's where they make all their money. This is a system of death. This system is a system of death. It makes its money off of the death and destruction, the parasiting of the people. And just because you get popcorn and hot dogs and churros and all kinds of bullshit from the baseball stadium, you think that that it's benevolent. No, they're making millions of dollars for every penny that you think of. And there's no changing that. There's no fixing that in this system, because this system was designed to be that way. It was designed to affect people the way it is right now. And when you have people like Russell Brand and David Icke and Sadhguru who run the middle line, they're playing the middle ground. Eckhart Tolle teaming up with Oprah and Super Soul Sunday and Tony Robbins, they are playing the middle line of spirituality in hopes in hopes to convince people that the Western thought process is actually beneficial for the people and not a cancer. So when they are telling you, no, you just need to fix yourself and the system will fix itself because that's the spiritual way of nature. No, that's the distraction. That's the next mind game. Because once they supposedly unify everybody under this, we're all one consciousness, we need to unify, and whether they use, whatever they use, some kind of simulation jump off point or some kind of alien agenda jump off point where they say, oh, we've been attacked by aliens, we need to come together, we're all human. That's the thing. The definitions are being given to you by the slave master parasite. And these slave master parasites will continue. They will sit there and they will look in your face and smile in your face and tell you how successful you can be in every kind of way in their world. But as soon as you start speaking against their world, you are now a threat. So the same way Google is censoring people today, that's why. You say any comments on any videos like London Real, Russell Brand, Sadhguru, Mujiji, Eckhart Tolle, they won't acknowledge your presence because you're talking in a different universe. You're speaking in a different language. They can't understand what you're saying because they're not meant to be understanding what you're saying because they speak a different language in a different world. So this is what I'm saying. That world is not some world that people are unfamiliar with. That world is the world that this system is protecting. It is the monetary world. It is the Western world. It is the so-called white world. Like I said, just as the same as you don't know the definition of humanity or human, you sure as hell don't know the fucking definition of white. Yet every single day, somebody saying right now, who are you? What are you? What are you? I'm white. I'm white. I'm white. I'm white. I'm white. You know why? Because they love, oh, I'm white. Oh, what do you mean? Oh, we're white people. Yeah. Oh, I'm just a white guy. They play it down. I'm just a white girl. I'm just a white woman. I'm just white. See, white is you already know what white is, but it's the name of the parasite. It's the color of the parasite. That's what it is. And like I said, white doesn't exist. White is a made up, it's a fictional character designed to have a very non-fictional effect on society and the people. But since it's still a character in the storyline of reality, and as long as people still interact with it as if it's a non-fiction, then it will continue to be existing as a non-fiction, even though it is a fiction, and everybody knows it's a fiction. The same way heliocentrism is accepted as a non-fiction, but it's sold to the masses as a non-fiction, but it's obviously a fiction, and they also use the overcompensation of the fictionality of it with cartoons and, you know, movies and all that other stuff out there. That's to overcompensate, so you don't even question it. Like, you'd be dumber than a child if you thought you lived on a flat earth or a not heliocentric earth. That's the atmosphere that the system wants to put out there. You're dumber than an idiot child if you're a flat earther. Get out of here, you weird guy. So that's the parasite talking. So we have to start writing down and like calling this shit out. What language does the parasite speak? What is this parasite? What does a parasite protect? These are the things. This shit needs to be called out and put. This is why I say it on my channel so much. It's not so much about what you're trying to share. It's also about what the system is trying to keep you from realizing. That's the other side of truth that the truth community is not even paying attention to. They'd rather spend all their attention on reactionary truth because that's what gets the views. That's what gets the attention, is all the stuff that other people are talking about. Nah. Think for your fucking self and get to the heart of this issue and start realizing like why this stuff exists, how this stuff exists, what's going on that is obviously a lie, and you can tell the truth about that obvious lie. You're just talking about some obvious shit. Like, after a while, flat earth falls into that category. So this is how that parasitic consciousness can get into even the ideas of critical thinkers, to where you turn your critical thinking mechanisms onto a not critically thinking topic. So yes, you are a critical thinker. You are and hoping and engaging in critical thought machinery, but what you're creating with that critical thought machinery is a non-critical thought issue, because the non-critical thought issue, because what you were creating with your critical thought machinery was for a non-critical thought world. That's what's happening. So as long as you are still in the space, this is why I say it's so important to analyze, to work on ourselves first before we start creating shit and putting shit out there, because it'll be dangerous. Like I said, with all these individuals like Russell Brand, Sadhguru, Muji, let's say one of them is really cool and then they just don't know what they're doing. Well, and then they team up with Oprah and they team up with the government and they try to tell the whole world how spiritual everything and everybody is. And then they honestly went into it not knowing about how the government and the colonial system is all fucked up. They genuinely went into, let's just say that exists out there. Well, did they have that intention? No, obviously. But did they have that counteractive effect on us? Of course they did. Did they have that malevolent effect on us? Yeah. But their intentions were benevolent, right? But overall, on a micro scale, their intentions were completely benevolent and dialed in. They helped everybody. Like all the people that helped me, all the shit that I've talked about, the New Age community, all these gurus, and like Eckhart Tolle, I read 2 of his books. Sadhguru, I've listened to hours of his stuff and he's been on point. But like I'm saying, that's the micro shit. That's the micro world. If they are ignorant to the macro world, they will be as effective as the villains, if not more effective. This is why I'm saying they will be more effective than the villains, which is why the villains, and I'm not using that word because it's too like comical, but the people who are manipulating the masses are utilizing these new age so-called teachers to push their agenda. That's the whole point. And all these individuals like Dan Pena or like this guy, his name is like the $1 trillion man. And he's known for doing these speech or these whatever it is, just getting people to invest their money or just basically just get involved in the money game and be successful. That's it. And his character is just fucking do it. Like just get out there and start investing or start being an entrepreneur and you're not gonna be able to do it unless you just fucking do it. Like these are white people who are so far gone, so far lost into the Western world that they have developed systems to just tell people to just not give a fuck about anything going on in any kind of system other than the Western ideologies. And they are so out there. That's why I said, if you're listening to like, how hard is it to see David Icke intertwined in this shit? He's been out there speaking for like 30 years now. He ain't said a fucking word. Claimed to be talking about truth, ain't said a fucking word about racism, white supremacy, but he said everything about aliens, shapeshifters, secret space programs, like all this other stuff. He talk about all this other information out there, but won't talk about the basic stuff that's hitting off the ground. Why? Because he's out there to do, like if you ask me, I think he's very much aware of what he's doing and he's hired to be doing what he's doing. He's had plenty of time to be knowing what's up. He had an introduction to flat earth information. He's supposed to be knowing about all this secret government shit, and you cannot be that fucking naive. You cannot be that naive and be aware of that information. I mean, maybe I could be wrong, but from what I'm seeing is that it doesn't matter anymore if I'm wrong on that person, what I think about what he is. The point is, whether he's naive or actively engaged in the limitation information that's out there, It doesn't matter, because on the macro scale, he is doing the job of somebody that if they knew what they were doing, then they would be as effective as David Icke is right now. So whether David Icke is knowing what he's doing or not, it doesn't matter. Because if somebody was out there doing David Icke's work and they did know what they were doing, then they would be just as effective. So does it matter if he's good or knows what he's doing? No, it doesn't fucking matter. He is distracting people from the macro storyline and investing all the energy and information into the micro storyline, and a fucked up backwards version of it at that. So there's David Icke, then you have Sadhguru, who's doing his nonprofit, guru thing around the world, telling people to be better people and, take care of yourself. Muji's doing the same thing. Be better people, take care of yourself. Don't stress out. Oprah, be better people, take care of yourself. Tony Robbins, be better people, take care of yourself. There's Dan Pena, be better people and make a whole bunch of fucking money. And then that carries over to the spoken word. The spoken word is now limited by people who think that they're from the leftists. See, people like David Icke and this is how it works. So the system is like in Dan Pena, the system is money. That's his fix. That's his fix right there. In Muji, Russell Brand, Sadhguru, Eckhart Tolle, their fix is spirituality, or whatever they want to call it. Becoming one with the now and the moment and the power of, whatever it is. That's their easy fix. So you have an atmosphere, or you have a world, and then you have the individual thought. So in the spoken word community, you have that's one run by spirituality, one world. You have another world run by money. That's this Dan Pena world, and then you have another world run by the leftist politically correct world, the mainstream world that is not on mainstream television. That includes regular stand-up and spoken word. To stay on point, it includes a lot of other things, but to stay on focus for here, in one world, like I said, you had the spiritual gurus with the New Age community. Then you have the economic gurus like Dan Pena with protecting in the Western world. So it's Western spirituality, Western finances, and Western thought processes in spoken word and stand-up. So your spoken word and stand-up community has been colonized, basically. So what they're doing is they're saying that, like this Dan Pena guy says, you need to just do this. What I'm telling you, you'll make a whole bunch of money. Well, spoken word artists are saying, well, you need to just think this and focus your attention on this, and then things will be better. But that's not the case. Just the same way as Dan Pena is not the case either. That's going to maybe it'll make money for you. Maybe some cool spoken words will make some money for you, or some attention, or whatever it is for you. But you're still dealing with the system within the system. You're not really going to the depths of how and why this stuff is out there. This is why communities like the spoken word community and the stand-up community are in no way, shape, or form a threat to the system. You only have 3 minutes or 5 minutes. You can only fit in so much in there, and you can only fit in enough information to start a conversation. So any comedian or any spoken word artist that goes into those venues and says anything, well, if you do not abide by their politically correct or their stylized format, then you will not be accepted as a creator in their world. And beyond that, you'll be seen as a threat. That's where I am right now with how I'm engaging with mostly spoken words. Because stand-up comedy, you can say anything, you can be funny, and they don't really care too much about that. I mean, it's so raunchy and all over the place. It's not like a thing that people really pride themselves in. It's not a community like spoken word is. Spoken word artists spoken word communities, from what I've seen, are heavily run by the LGBTQ community. And when I say run, I also mean limited by. The same way discussion formats are limited by politically correct video cut off. So I think I was saying something around the format being limited by the world that format exists in. So like I said, you have the gurus who are like, well, the answer is the new age. Think like a new ager. Then you have the London real people who are saying, think money into your life and just do it and you'll be successful. And they're not acknowledging anything else. They're thinking the same thought process. And mind you, this is all Western money, Western spirituality, and Western art, or Western, like, because spoken word art is Western art, period. Stand-up comedy is Western comedy. And then you have the rest of the world who just copies and pastes that. And then since they've generated this monetary thing, the rest of the world just, is judged by the original people who supposedly came up with those styles of art forms and all that other stuff. So this is where you have Bollywood coming in, and China trying to do its own thing as Hollywood, and like all these people doing their styles of engaging in the Western world. Well, stand-up comedy is that same way. It's run by Western consciousness. The people in the audience are going to limit the actual style. So here's an example. In the spoken word that I did, if you talk about information that goes over the heads, like if you talk about information that goes over, okay, so people don't know. In a spoken word, like comedy, or not spoken word comedy, but a spoken word event night, what you have is a whole bunch of spoken word artists go on the stage, and you have these random judges that are picked in the audience, like 5 or 6 of them, that throw up numbers between 1 and 10, 6.5, whatever it is, 6.7, something like that. So all the way up, 1 to 10. So you have all these people who are they're not spoken word artists. They don't really know. They just are going based upon, what everybody else around them is judging by. And they have like a poet come up and say something, and then you have like a pre-poet, so they can know how to judge. The thing is, even the judging format is controlled by the artists, because the majority of people in the audience are the artists most of the time, because it's not a big venue, or it's not a big thing, spoken word. I mean, some places it might be, but you're even in the big venues, you're going to have still a lot of artists. So they're going to be communicating with the judges at the same time too. So it really is this thing that's alive that is claiming to be, separate. So the artists are going to take care of themselves. And if you're an outsider, then you won't get the same support as the insiders get. And what makes you an outsider is if you don't speak the language of the insiders. If you don't speak insider language, like an example of this is if you don't do Western spoken word, like if you don't speak on the issues that are or if you don't express yourself that is acceptable by Western senses, then you will be judged accordingly by Western belief systems. And what I'm saying is that in itself is a hindrance on the true origins of the core of spoken word itself. It's not supposed to have any kind of limitations built in there. This is why I'm saying the format has overtaken the content, and the format has overtaken the intent, the intentions. So, and that's exactly where the system wants it to be. So the format of politically correct, the format of the Western world is this whole democracy, capitalism, spreading freedom unquestionably. That's the format. That's what people are voting for. And when they say, we got to stand by our president because that's our president. I don't care, you know, what kind of piece of shit he is. He's our president. Because what they are saying is, this is our land. It's our shit. We have to support anything that's for us. Because if they don't support that piece of shit, then they're not supporting their illusions of being in control of this land. That's why they have to blindly support every fucked up thing that happens over the whole world. And they're blindly supporting it because they get something back. And like I was saying, so-called white people, what do they get back? They're still trying to fight the idea that they get some kind of privilege, that they get a privilege out of it. They're trying to say that they don't get a privilege out of it. They'll give you every excuse in the book to tell you that there is no privilege there. When in fact, the name white is a fucking privilege. And they will never acknowledge that. They will automatically jump to the Jews. Oh, the Jews lie about this. The Jews are in the Hollywood industry. The Jews have conducted this and that in the political industry. Everything to take away from the psychology of how and why the Jews got that power. How did they get the power to convince everybody that they were the victims of the world? Who helped them with the media and production, the advertising and the marketing? Who helped the Jews? Was the Jewish blueprint of how they were going to conduct their actions around the world, was it at all? Did they get absolutely no help from racism, white supremacy? Did the Jews do it all by themselves? Where were the so-called white people when the Jews were doing everything wrong in the whole world? Where were so-called white people? What were they doing? That's why when I say this shit, and then you see in the comment section, people just go ape shit. Because I see a lot of that is, you know, people who are hired to do that shit because they want to control the dialogue. It's not that difficult to, you know, to say something in the comments and then, you know, steer the whole conversation to go a certain way. Most people nowadays, especially on this channel, are being a little more cognizant of what's going on with that. So they don't really engage too much or even say too much because it's not really about that. But you are aware that, and people are aware that there's systems out there that are designed to keep us at a certain vibe, like at a certain frequency. We're not supposed to think too far. So this is where I'm coming from when I'm talking about spoken word and stand-up comedy. I'm looking for certain venues right now. If anybody has any ideas about that, venues or any kind of settings, and I'd be open to any kind of information dealing with that, because right now it's pretty much boiling down to open mic, spoken word, and stand-up comedy as far as interacting with the community. Other than, and I don't want to do any of those because those are all limited by the format, and it's bullshit ultimately. There's nothing wrong, like I don't want to say it's bullshit like all across the board. It's beautiful, like some spoken word has broken me down into tears, and that's a beautiful thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. Same thing with comedy, like stand-up comedy. It's broken me all the way down, and there's a thing right there. But what I'm saying is that there is a limitation in the format that keeps us from going beyond that. And if we can see, like what I challenged myself to do with this channel is to not be limited by any kind of stylized formats, so that I can push myself to go into the and focus everything on the content itself, the information itself. Yeah. So since this system, this information that needs to be shared, critically thought, like in like spoken word, the information that needs to be shared is so far beyond a 3-minute set or a 5-minute set, that if it gets shrunk down to 3 5-minute set, it'll usually be seen as something very abrasive or harsh or angry and stuff like that, and they don't really get it. And that's true. At the same time, like what I'm saying, when I say there needs to be anger exists for a reason. I didn't invent anger, so I'm not the bad guy for inventing anger. It exists for a reason. All this, so that's politically correct. This is what that spoken word shit. They also want to keep you from like feeling those emotions. And by installing the LGBTQ community into the spoken word community, they also keep a lot of the information from like, you can't say certain things, or certain people can't say certain things that will offend the communities attached to the format. So since the LGBTQ community is attached to the spoken word format, well, what's going to be successful in spoken word? People who cater to LGBTQ beliefs and that whole politically correct leftist agenda. And if you don't acknowledge or even play in that world, or think that it's like a side thing, then something's wrong with you. Same thing goes for like so-called black issues, or indigenous issues, or whatever they call them. It's maxed out at police brutality. The same way. So basically, the spoken word community and the stand-up community is a mirror image of the VH1, MTV, mainstream news community. What they've done and what they do is, because those are the audience members, those are the people that come out there, so they have to tell you dick jokes, fat jokes, pussy jokes, race jokes, because there ain't nothing but dick commercials, pussy movies, and fat documentaries out there. So like on the mainstream television and on the news, they got all the anger and hostility, or the race stuff and all that other stuff. So they're going to say what's going to be received. So you can't. So since people are so dumbed down by social media and the mainstream concept of information, the artistic formats like stand-up comedy and spoken word have been affected. And what I'm saying is that those versions of stand-up comedy and those versions of spoken word are not the original versions. They are the Western versions. And in that existing, those versions are inherently limiting and destroying ultimately our ability to go as far as we need to go into challenging the system. And the system knows that, which is why it's beneficial to have the LGBTQ community and every other mainstream community attached and basically infiltrating the idea of spoken word. Does spoken word have anything on its own to do with LGBTQ community stuff? Absolutely not. You're talking about words spoken. Period. Does it have to abide by anybody else's bull? Fuck no. So this is what's happening. Each style of expression out there has a cancer attached to it. This is not to say, I'm not saying people don't get in their feelings, oh, you're calling LGBTQ people are cancerous. No. You're taking the micro and you're judging it by the macro. That's not it. No, I'm talking about the macro. The macro expression of spoken word is definitely limited by the attachments of the LGBTQ community. There's no discussing that any other way. That's it. The same way that the stand-up community, this is why I can't even watch a lot of stand-up comedy, because it's limited by these dumbasses out there. These people who just fucking dick joke, fart joke, pussy joke you to death. And then in this arrogant style of format. So it's just this arrogant idiocracy, this arrogant childish ass behavior. And the spoken word community ain't no different. Not to come down on people who are sharing their emotions or anything like that, but when you got, you know, hours and hours and thousands of hours of people writing down all their heartbroken emotions about, you know, Johnny or Zachary and Valerie and Stephanie that fucked them over, you know, like they're loving, oh, my heart's so fucking broken, I have to go on stage and, you know, tell the world about, you know, what Jessica did, you know, to whatever it is, you know, all this shit that's out there. It's all about this cheap version of love, cheap version of comedy, cheap version of truth, cheap version of spirituality. All of it's fucking cheap, all of it. And if you step into any of these venues, you have to go hard. If you don't go hard, you'll basically be non-existent, because they'll click up against you, and then it'll shut down. So this is what I'm saying. If anybody was thinking about anything like that, because I know people are starting to think like that now, start thinking from this perspective, like learn from what I've learned, and now start piecing together, like a long time, in 2012, so like 7 years ago, I had this idea. I even wrote a flyer for it and everything, talking about us having like little kind of circles or something, where something like not dealing with so something like having a whole bunch of people who are critical thinkers together, like getting them together in kind of like a spoken word format, but not being limited by the spoken word format. Having like 5 to 10, 15 minutes, whatever it is, to say what you say, just a little bit longer, but you definitely do have a cutoff point, but having it be based upon like information. It ain't got shit to do with format. And then, you know, people say what they gotta say, but definitely being focused on the macro. The macro is the intention there. And if you're not talking about the macro, then the people in those circles will hold them accountable, so that we can continue the discussion further and not get caught up in this, you know, back and forth. Like instantaneously take it to the macro. Because anytime you're going to the spoken word, you get like little sparks. You'll get a little splinter of macro communication, macro information, but it's totally closed out and you know, clouded and smogged out by all the micro bullshit, the micro love stories, the micro politics, the micro street information, the micro education, the micro conspiracy theories, like the micro, everything is about the micro. And that's what's dangerous. So the same way YouTube, the flat earth community, this is another example. The flat earth community did it too. They westernized flat earth. What happened to the flat earth community as soon as people on the internet started finding flat earth? So-called white people got on their authoritative, hard pedestals again and started telling indigenous people, you can't talk about that kind of flat earth. I'll time you out from this chat screen or this live chat. I'll ban you from this live chat. These are flat earthers who have banned me and other people because I was talking about my perspectives of flat earth that weren't a part. They thought it was not a part of their flat earth storyline. So the same way I was, you know, shadow banned in the flat earth community in different styles, the same thing happens when you go out into the other community, the mainstream communities where white people are running shit again. Who do you think is running these spoken word communities out there? And it's so far beyond this. I'm actually getting ready to put something together, because the spoken word thing that I went to was completely manipulated. To make it a long story short, the lady who was running the spoken word night, she always runs it, so she doesn't really perform to be judged. But this night she wasn't performing, and she had somebody else doing the MC stuff there. First of all, I say my name is CE to eventually start talking about my other YouTube channel, Circle's Edge, but also to keep people from being like, oh, you know, I can't pronounce his name, so they'll just fuck it up. So they messed that up. They messed the name. Said it was supposed to be like, next on the stage is C-E, and then see, oh yeah, so they're clapping on. But the way she told him to pronounce, this is how I'm thinking, she told him to pronounce C.E, it just kind of like throws off the, so that's how he said it, C.E. And so there's no flow to it, there's no nothing. So I'm thinking that's on purpose because this lady does not like me at all. Any kind of interaction where she's totally dismissive of me, like completely doesn't like my shit. I went up there hardcore on an open mic night, and I don't think it was taken too lightly because they have a fucking two Che Guevara flags standing in an Irish pub. They don't say anything about that shit. So I went off hard on that, how Western mindsets just, you know, take like real world scenarios that are going on, and then they just downplay and just like, oh yeah, this is just a thing. Let's just take the colonial world and turn it into a spoken word topic. How about that? And we'll just go about our business. So anyway, to close this out, because this is why I'm really taking it this far, is that venue was completely, the integrity of that venue was completely fucked. When I saw what happened that night. So basically, since she wasn't performing, she wasn't emceeing, she was performing. And you get a little bit of money when you perform. And because people are paying at the door, even the artists have to pay. It's a sliding scale between $7 to $10. But even if you're performing, you have to pay because there's a little payout for the winner. Mind you, this MC who was performing this night also supposedly teaches spoken word, which is, you know, whatever. So this is just a testament to what I was saying before. The format has overtaken the intent or the content. So she teaches it. She needs more students. She also wants to get paid. So what is she going to do? This stage was not greatly lit. Like one of the lights was off, while the colorful lights was all night until it was her time to go up there perform. And when she went up there, what did she do? She turned on the lights only for her. See how fucked up this is? So she turned on these lights, extra lights. Everybody's, oh yeah, clapping because she's the teacher of spoken word. So she does her little thing, says her little thing. The first round, second round, who do you think wins? She wins. Because of the, I mean, obviously spoken in the spoken word world, yeah, I'm not going to say that she was completely not talented. She has some talent, but in my opinion, there was like two other spoken word artists there that blew her out of the water. But since she played the spoken word format game and catered to the limited mindsets of the judges that were also picked by her, so she picks it. She knows who's gonna receive what. She knows who to talk to. You see how fucked up this is? So this is how the spoken word community has been colonized by people who have their own shit, their own micro shit attached to it. The LGBTQ community has its own micro shit attached to it. No matter how many LGBTQ community people out there, it's still a micro perspective. The same way her little, like, I need to get this money, I need to, you know, set up the vibe. She knew them lights was off the whole time. She knew they were off. And she used it to her benefit against other artists for money. You see how the integrity in that whole fucking thing is fucked up now. So I don't think I said, this is the Starry Plow in Berkeley, California, by the way. For people who know about it or not. I don't know the lady who runs it or anything. I'm just telling you the truth. Everybody else saw it too. If I had done that, it wouldn't have been, but since she's mixed white girl with something else, I don't know. And that's another thing too. White women who are mixed with something, they have, especially in Berkeley, they have an arrogance that is just through this fucking. They think they are the most smartest fucking people in the whole fucking universe. They and no other topics that not only into like smart, but you know, smart and you're dumb kind of smart. Like not only are they smart, but you're so fucking stupid. You're so ignorant. Because they're so smart. Like that's the atmosphere of the UC, Berkeley, Stanford, Harvard type of white consciousness. And it exists inside of every other little venue and outlet out there, including and especially spoken word. And for damn sure, in stand-up, it exists the other way. So spoken word is like the feminine expression, whereas stand-up comedy is like the masculine, the Western feminine and the Western masculine. This is how the Western feminine and the Western masculine gets to express itself. And both of them get unified in the New Age, concept. And that's basically what it boils down to. And I didn't really see it that way until just now. But that's how it is. Because when you're sitting in it, you feel this very like, and this is why in the LGBTQ or in the spoken word community, you have a lot of gay men, in particular gay black men in the Oakland, Berkeley, San Francisco spoken word type setup. Trans people too, because in the eyes of the New Age community, they are seen as expressing their divine feminine, but it's not. It's the synthetic version of the feminine and the masculine. It's reactionary feminine to imbalanced and broken masculine. This and since that's a benefit to the Western world pushes broken masculinity because it leads to broken femininity in both men and women. So this is why the LGBTQ community is pushed specifically in the spoken word community, because it will both push the LGBTQ community limitations and the spoken word limitations, and they are very similar. And they will use that, and that will be used as the pressure relief valve. So the spoken word community is used as the pressure relief valve for the feminine, the divine feminine, or whatever you want to call it, the feminine aspects of consciousness in society. That's the Western world's pressure relief valve is the spoken word community. For the people on the streets. And then you have, for the masculine, the divine masculine, the pressure relief valve for the Western divine masculine consciousness is stand-up comedy. That's why it's so raunchy and just childish and stupid, and you know, it's so weak and sad. Really, it's ultimately just sad. But you can see how it's all about pussy jokes, dick jokes, race jokes, and it's just about shock value. I didn't really notice those two comparisons until now, but that's pretty much what it boils down to. These not formats, but these venues, these types of interactions in society, because that's what they are. Stand-up comedy is an interactive thing for the society. Same as spoken word is an interactive setting for the society. There are not many interactive settings for society, because they are all controlled by the system. If you have too many interactive settings for the community, then you will have too many people in the community thinking of things outside of this manipulated community or the synthetic consciousness. So whatever kind of interactive venues that you have in the community need to be controlled and dominated by another factor, by another kind of concept. So in spoken word, it's dominated by judgment, it's dominated by a style, a format, and it's also dominated by a people, LGBTQ, so on and so forth. In stand-up comedy, it's dominated by ego, raunchy, well, funny too. It's just kind of like this atmosphere of make me laugh, motherfucker. And if you're not funny, then fuck you. There's that thing too. So you got to deal with people on that level too, and you just got to be funny. How you deal with them, you're just fucking funny. If you're not funny, then they're gonna tear it, and rightfully too. You went on that stage. If you're not funny, then get the fuck out the stage. But in spoken word, it's a little different. Spoken word is if you ask me, spoken word is about the information itself, the intention there. It's about the word that is spoken. It has really nothing to do, like stand-up comedy means be comedy, be funny. Spoken word doesn't mean be what? Be style, be spoken word style. That's what it is now. But the real deep spoken word artists know in spoken word, be real, be something. But when you have people who are about nothing who run it, then whatever that something is will be nothing. It'll be some bullshit. So all of your venues and settings around society, even though they might be run a certain way or have this appearance of, being for the people or this and that, nah. Analyze them from the macro perspective and you'll realize something that wasn't there before. That is pretty obvious and needs to be addressed immediately. And that's what I'm saying. Like, for me, it's too easy to just put together a few spoken word things here and there and then just say them here and there, but that's still entering into their world, and I want to start thinking outside of that world, from like going into our own venues, setting up our own events, and setting up like a different kind. So that stand-up has its own venue and setting, spoken word has its own venue and setting, and all that stuff. Satsangs have their own venue and setting there. So like all these different things have their own style. If anybody has any ideas, or even if you have any venue ideas, or stuff like that, especially in the Bay Area, Oakland, whatever it is, let me know. That's close to me in and around this area. I'll even go out to San Francisco too, but it has to be the right